A low tide of silence gathers at the edge of perception, and it feels as though the air itself has drawn a long, unbroken breath. The horizon does not sit still, it shimmers, shifting like a veil of velvet cloth laid across a vast, unseen table. The sea stretches endlessly outward, but it does not move with the violence of waves or the rhythms of storms. It lies folded into itself, a stillness so profound that sound has no place to rest. Above, the stars seem not to watch, but to sleep, their faint glimmers pulsing like the slow rhythm of a resting heart. Each one exhales light into the dark, not sharp, not piercing, but soft and trembling, as if even the heavens are caught between dreaming and memory. From the stillness, small flickers awaken beneath the skin of the ocean. At first they are no more than suggestions of glow, indistinct ripples of pale silver floating upward. Then, like lanterns rising in a midnight procession, they multiply, each flicker finding its rhythm, each glow finding its shape. They do not move with urgency. They drift upward, then sway downward again, like hands carrying candles through a long, unseen corridor. Their light spreads across the waters, trembling faintly, touching the surface in ripples of quiet gold and blue. It is not fire, and it is not flame. It is something softer, as if light has been woven from forgotten lullabies and released into the current. The ocean beneath begins to stir, not with waves that break, not with tides that pull, but with folds of movement that bend inward like breath. The water seems to be listening, and you cannot help but wonder what it listens to. There is no sound, not yet, only the suggestion of resonance, a vibration older than any song, older than bells or voices. The silence thickens, and yet it feels alive, as though it is waiting for something unnamed. Drifting closer, you notice the faintest silhouettes forming in the deep. At first, they are no more than shadows stitched into the water, patterns too steady to be the play of light. Slowly, the shadows sharpen, resolving into columns, arches, and spires. Temples rise, vast and solemn, though they do not rise quickly. They seem to hover, suspended in water and time, their outlines woven not from stone, but from light itself. Their columns are draped in luminous seagrass, strands of green and silver that sway without current. Blossoms of light drift upward. From their crowns, petals not born of earth, but of memory, glowing with a fragile fire that does not burn. You find yourself moving forward, though your body does not swim. The water carries you, holds you, and breathes with you. You feel as though you are not entering the sea, but that the sea itself is stepping inward, folding around your presence, carrying you into its vast interior. The temples rise taller as you draw near, their arches sweeping wide, their doorways yawning like mouths of ancient caves. They are not ruins, they are not intact. They are something beyond those words, something suspended between creation and dissolution, held in a state of eternal becoming. As you draw near, you see the walls are not solid but translucent, their surfaces trembling with faint inscriptions. Symbols ripple across them like reflections, shifting each time you try to understand them. They are not meant to be read, they are meant to be felt, like the memory of a forgotten language, one you once spoke before waking into this world. The inscriptions flicker, dissolve, and reform. You let them pass through you, as though their meaning is not in words, but in the way the light bends when they move, The silence of the ocean thickens as you pass beneath the first arch. A hush fills the space, but it is not empty. It is resonant, like the pause before music begins. The columns stretch upward into shadows, their tops lost in darkness, or perhaps in light too soft to see. The floor beneath you glows faintly with veins of silver, each vein winding like a river across the stone, converging toward the heart of the temple. With each step, ripples spread outward, glowing faintly before dissolving into stillness once more. It feels as though the temple itself is aware of your presence, acknowledging each step, each breath, each moment you drift deeper. In the distance, a faint sound begins. At first, it is no more than a vibration at the edge of thought, too soft to name, too subtle to hold. Then it spreads, not louder, but fuller, like a bell rung deep within the water. It is not struck, it breathes. The resonance expands, fills the arches, moves through the columns, and shivers across your skin. It is not a melody, but it is music. It is not a voice, but it speaks. The temple listens to itself, and you listen with it. Your eyes catch a procession of statues lining the corridor. Cloaked figures carved of light and stone stand with their heads bowed, faceless yet full of presence. Their cloaks drift as though caught in water, yet the stone does not move. You cannot tell if they are still or if they are waiting. Each figure carries something different: a lantern with no flame, a bowl filled with starlight, a staff carved from coral, a book whose pages are water. Their silence is not absence. Their silence is prayer. Deeper within the air, if it can be called air, grows heavier. The walls glisten with veins of coral, soft and luminous, glowing like stained glass under candlelight. Fish drift slowly through the arches, their bodies glowing faintly, their fins leaving trails of silver dust. They do not flee from you. They circle gently, as if curious, as if you belong to the current. In the distance, the glow brightens, not from fire, not from flame, but from a vast opening that seems to breathe with the rhythm of the sea itself. You enter a central chamber, and here the ceiling is not a ceiling at all. It opens upward into the night, into a sky that is both above and within the water. The stars hang close, trembling like lanterns suspended by invisible threads. Their light does not shine down. It shines inward, wrapping the chamber in folds of gold and silver. The water around you glows as though it too carries stars within it, reflections that are not reflections but presences. It feels as though you stand in the heart of an hourglass, where both sea and sky have poured themselves into one another, indistinguishable and infinite. A pool lies at the center of the chamber, still and perfect, its surface like polished glass. It reflects not only the stars above, but also the temples beneath, as though holding two worlds at once. When you look into it, you see not your own reflection, but corridors you have not yet walked, arches you have not yet passed beneath, thresholds you have not yet crossed. The pool is not water, it is a doorway, and though it waits in silence, it feels alive, pulsing faintly with each breath you take. The bell tone swells again, low and hollow, carrying the weight of ages. It does not echo, it absorbs. The sound presses into your chest, and for a moment it feels as though your heart beats in rhythm with it. You close your eyes, and in the darkness behind your eyelids you see staircases unfolding downward, endless, and spiraling, each step glowing faintly. each step leading deeper into something unseen. The sound fades and silence returns, but the image remains, etched into your mind like fire on stone. When you open your eyes, the chamber feels different. The statues seem closer. The light seems warmer. The silence seems thicker. You are no longer certain whether you have moved at all, or whether the temple itself has shifted around you. Time drifts like sand through water, dissolving into something immeasurable. You cannot say how long you have been here. You cannot say if you are at the beginning or the middle. The only certainty is that there is more, always more, waiting. Beyond, the blossoms of light that crown the temple outside begin to drift inward, carried through the arches by invisible currents. They float across the chamber, petals of pale fire spinning slowly, descending gently until they vanish into the pool at its center. Each petal dissolves into ripples of light, and each ripple lingers longer than the last, spreading across the surface until the pool glows brighter than the stars above. The water does not break. It deepens, pulling your gaze into its impossible depths. Something moves beneath the pool. Not a shadow, not a creature, a door, a threshold formed of light. It waits just beneath the surface, shimmering with the quiet patience of eternity. The stars above lean closer, as if listening for the choice you have not yet made. The silence grows thick enough to breathe, heavy enough to carry you forward. You take a step closer, and the chamber bends around you. The columns blur, the arches tremble, the stars ripple like cloth shaken by wind. The temple itself exhales, and in that breath you feel both welcome and surrender. You kneel at the edge of the pool, and for a moment you hesitate. The silence holds you. The stars watch. The water glows. Then, slowly, inevitably, you extend your hand. The surface ripples beneath your touch. Not cold, not wet, but alive. It draws you in, not downward, but inward, as though the pool is not beneath, but within. The door of light trembles, widens, and opens. The blossoms of fire spiral downward, vanishing into its glow. The sound of the bell returns, louder, fuller, resonating not only through the temple, but through your own body, filling you with the weight of something vast and unspoken. The pool deepens, and the stars above dissolve into it, merging sky with sea, night with dream, silence with memory. You lean forward, and the water accepts you. It closes above your head, but you do not sink. You drift, you float. You are carried into corridors of endless light, staircases unfolding into horizons you cannot measure. The temple fades be. The hush arrives without warning, a silence so complete it feels as though the entire world has stopped to listen. Twilight spreads like a breath across the horizon, and sea and sky melt into one endless fabric of indigo. There is no separation, no border, only a single expanse of color that deepens with every heartbeat. Above, the stars stir faintly in their sleep, trembling as if caught between dreams, their light unsteady, fragile, like the echo of something they once remembered. They do not blaze, they hum, low and soft, breathing faintly as if they, too, are alive. The water does not move, yet it ripples inward, folding itself into stillness that feels more like waiting than rest. The air bends as though heavy with memory. Beneath this still surface, shadows begin to gather. They are faint at first, no more than wisps of dark weaving into the blue. Then, slowly, deliberately, they take on shape. Columns rise, arches curve, spires stretch upward, not with speed, not with force, but with the inevitability of breath. Vast temples bloom beneath the water, their outlines glowing faintly against the darkness, as though their very foundations are woven from luminous currents. They rest on nothing solid, anchored not to stone or earth, but to the pulse of light itself. You drift toward them without choosing, as though carried by the hush that binds sea and sky together. Every movement feels less like your own and more like the slow unfolding of a story already written in silence. The temples grow larger with each breath, vast forms suspended in the depths, their walls neither new nor broken, their presence untouched by time. They are not ruins, yet they are not fresh creations. They stand as something eternal, something caught between memory and invention, as though imagined by countless dreamers and held together by longing. Their arches glow with faint radiance, the color of silver pressed into shadow, while their steps fall away into depths that cannot be measured. A hum stirs beneath the water, so faint it could be the sound of your own pulse. It stretches outward, filling the space between each column, sliding through the hollows of each arch. The sound does not echo, it simply exists, a resonance without origin, a voice that belongs to neither past nor present. It speaks not in words, but in sensation, the way silence speaks when it becomes too heavy to hold. Each breath of the hum seems to move through your chest, aligning with your heartbeat, reminding you that you, too, belong to this place. You pass between towering columns that shimmer as though carved from woven glass. The surfaces ripple faintly, not hard, not solid, but fluid, like reflections, frozen for just a moment too long. Faint inscriptions scatter across them, glyphs of light that shift as you gaze, refusing to remain still. They are not meant to be understood. They are meant to be felt, to press gently against the quiet corners of memory, to remind you of something you cannot name. The air thickens with reverence, as though every shape here is both temple and dream, both sanctuary and echo. Within, the shadows gather into forms more intricate. Statues stand in procession, cloaked figures holding objects that glow faintly in the dim. One cradles a mirror filled with liquid light. Another carries a lantern without flame. Another opens its hands to release a scatter of silver dust that floats endlessly in suspension. They are faceless, but their facelessness feels deliberate, as if to remind you that they are not strangers. They are what remains when names are forgotten, when memory has dissolved into silence. Their presence is not empty, but full, each one holding the weight of forgotten prayers that still shimmer faintly in the water. The floor beneath your steps glows with thin rivers of light, branching outward like veins, converging at the center of the chamber. Each step sends ripples across the glow, spreading outward before dissolving, as if the temple itself is breathing with you. In the distance, the walls part, and you see chambers beyond chambers, arches leading into arches, each one unfolding like a dream within a dream. There is no end to them, only deeper layers. Each corridor a threshold into something more. Above, the ceiling shivers, and through it the stars draw closer. They do not simply shine, they lean down, bending their light through the water, as if They long to touch what lies beneath. Their glow scatters across the columns, refracting into shapes that ripple like veils. You look upward and cannot tell whether the stars are above or within the water, whether the sky has descended or the sea has risen. In this place, there is no distinction. Sea and sky are one, dream and memory inseparable. The silence grows heavy. Again, and within it, you hear a single sound, a bell, faint and hollow, tolling from somewhere unseen. It does not ring with clarity. It shivers, as if struck gently by a hand made of shadow. The sound ripples outward, sliding through the arches, threading itself into the water until it reaches you. It presses against your chest, and you feel as though your heart is answering it, beating slower, quieter, matching its rhythm. You move forward again, deeper into the hushed architecture. The air grows denser, and the shadows more luminous, until you find yourself standing before a great expanse. A pool lies at its center, wide and perfectly still, its surface reflecting not only the stars above, but also the temples themselves. When you look into it, you see neither yourself nor your surroundings as they are. You see corridors you have not yet walked, staircases spiraling downward, doors of light opening into chambers you cannot name. The reflection is not a mirror. It is a memory of what is to come. The blossoms of light that crown the temples outside drift inward now, petals of fire descending slowly, spiraling down into the pool. Each one dissolves into ripples that spread across the surface, glowing brighter until the entire expanse shimmers like a second sky. The stars above tremble as though listening to this reflection of themselves, leaning closer, whispering in silence. The water stirs, not breaking, but deepening, darkening, inviting. Something waits within it. A door formed of trembling radiance, a threshold woven of silver and indigo. It is neither open nor closed. It simply exists, patient and eternal. The silence thickens until it feels like breath held too long. You know, without knowing, that what lies beyond the threshold is not an ending, but another beginning. The hum of the temple deepens. The bell tolls once more, and the pool glows brighter. Holding your gaze, you drift closer, and as you do, the chamber bends. The arches blur, the columns tremble, the stars ripple into veils of shifting light. The temple exhales, and you feel the weight of its breath. Kneeling at the edge, you touch the water, and the surface ripples as though recognizing you. It does not resist. It opens, folding inward like a veil drawn aside. The door beneath pulses, widens, and begins to draw you in. The silence is complete now, yet alive, filled with the echo of all that has been left unsaid. You fall forward, not downward, but inward, into corridors of light, into staircases spiraling, through shadows, into a darkness that glows softly with promise. The temple fades, the stars dissolve, but their presence remains within you, guiding you onward. The last sound is the toll of the bell, fading but unbroken, calling you deeper, and as you drift into the threshold, as the veil folds around you, as the silence opens into another chamber unseen, you know the journey has only just begun, and that what waits ahead is vaster, softer, more infinite still. The first sensation is not of motion, but of suspension. It is as though your body has been unfastened from gravity, set adrift between the slow pulse of unseen waves and the long, unbroken breath of night. You hover there, in stillness, in silence, in the faint shimmer of something larger than yourself. The air carries no weight, the water no resistance, only the soft awareness that you are being carried, not by hands, not by tides, but by something vaster, more patient, across the horizon. A glow unfolds. It is not the glow of dawn, not the promise of day, but something deeper, stranger. The stars themselves appear to fold inward, bending slowly, as if weary of their height. Their light descends in long strands, threads of gold and silver unraveling from the dark fabric of heaven, sinking into the sea with the gentleness of drifting ash. Each spark touches the water and lingers there, not fading, but absorbed, remembered. The ocean glows faintly in response, shimmering like a mirror that has learned every star by heart. Each ripple carries echoes of constellations, each wave a fleeting memory of the sky. Then, from that glowing memory, something vast emerges. The outlines are faint at first, shadows rising like smoke, unreal and dissolving. But they sharpen with each breath, solidifying not into land or mountain, but into towering forms of architecture. Temples rise, impossibly tall, their spires piercing both water and sky, as though refusing to choose between them. Their presence is overwhelming, and yet they rise in silence. No tremor shakes the sea, no thunder splits the night. They stand, without sound, without effort, as if they have always been here, suspended in the timeless hush between breath and heartbeat. You drift closer, though you do not swim. The ocean itself carries you inward, its surface shimmering with the weight of centuries. The temples are immense, their walls vast plains of silver and shadow. At first they seem smooth, polished like glass, but as you near, the truth begins to stir. The surfaces ripple with inscriptions, verses that shift like water, that glimmer like reflections. No hand carved them, no chisel touched them. They are written by the currents themselves, by the folding of moonlight across stone, by the whispered memory of stars. Each inscription changes the moment your eyes touch it, refusing permanence, refusing to be held. They are alive, breathing, slipping away, returning again in forms both familiar and strange. The silence deepens. It presses against your skin, moves into your chest, folds into your breath. The closer you drift, the more you feel that this place is not merely a vision, but a presence, a living hush, awake in its own way. The walls shimmer as though they recognize you. The inscriptions curl and bend as though reshaping themselves in answer to your gaze. You realize you are being read as much as you are reading, and the thought drifts through you like a ripple across still water. A faint sound begins, not a melody, not yet. A resonance, low and hollow, as if the ocean is humming to itself. It threads through the spires, wraps around the inscriptions, settles into the arches. The tone is not steady. It wavers, bends, lingers. It is older than bells, older than voices, a sound that feels more like memory than music. With each pulse, the inscriptions shimmer brighter, spilling faint light across the stone, then fading again into shadow. The walls breathe with it, as though the sound and the temple are one. You pass beneath an arch so high it vanishes into darkness. The water is no longer water, but air that clings, air that shimmers. It is difficult to tell where the sea ends and the temple begins. Within, the silence thickens into reverence. you feel yourself smaller, slower, softer. Columns rise like trees, their surfaces liquid with inscriptions, their roots lost in shadows below. Between them, doorways open onto corridors that curve away like rivers, endless and unseen. In one passage, you glimpse a mosaic across the floor, glowing faintly with shifting constellations. But they are not constellations, you know. They bend into patterns you cannot name, as if the stars themselves had arranged into stories forgotten before your birth. The mosaic ripples faintly, then disappears, only to appear again elsewhere. Flickering like a thought, the air or water thickens with light. Soft orbs drift past, glowing spheres that hover near the inscriptions, illuminating them for a moment before dissolving into mist. They seem alive, listening, but they speak only in silence. One passes close to you, brushing your arm with a faint shimmer. It feels like warmth, or perhaps recognition, before it drifts away. The resonance deepens. It gathers like breath before song. You turn toward the sound, and the walls part into a vast hall. Here, the spires vanish into heights unseen, and the inscriptions gather like waves, layering over one another until the walls themselves shine with pale fire. At the center of the hall stands a pool, its surface motionless, a mirror within a mirror. The glow of the inscriptions leans into it, and the water bends into visions. Not reflections of this chamber, not reflections of you, but of places you have not yet seen. Corridors stretching into light, stairways carved from shadow, doorways trembling with fire. You lean closer, and the surface ripples. It does not scatter the image, it deepens it. You see the temples not as they are, but as they were, as they will be, as they might be. 1,000 versions of themselves, layered upon one another like veils, some crumbling into ruin, some shining with unbroken light, some dissolving entirely into stars. All true, all false, all possible. The resonance swells again, this time fuller, stronger. The inscriptions on the walls flare bright, then dim, then flare again, like the heartbeat of the temple itself. The air quivers, and for a moment you think you hear voices within the hum, whispers carried across water, prayers left unfinished, names spoken and dissolved. They are faint to follow, yet they linger, trailing through the silence like smoke. You close your eyes, and the sound seeps inward. It fills the hollow spaces of memory, presses against the corners of thought. For an instant, you see yourself within the inscriptions, your own outline traced in silver, written into the walls of the temple. When you open your eyes, the vision dissolves, but the feeling remains, echoing faintly through your chest. The pool grows brighter. Its glow spills across the floor, climbs the columns, threads through the arches. The inscriptions shift more rapidly now, verses colliding, dissolving, reforming. The resonance bends, stretches, then softens again. Something waits in the silence that follows, as though the temple itself is holding its breath. The stars above tremble faintly, their light seeping through the ceiling, bending into the chamber. They descend slowly, gently, like petals falling through water. One by one, they touch the surface of the pool, and each touch ripples outward, leaving circles of light that do not fade. The water shimmers brighter until it glows like a second. Sky spread across the floor. At the far end of the hall, a doorway appears. It is not carved, it is not built, it is formed entirely of glow, a frame of trembling silver and indigo. Beyond it lies no corridor, no chamber, only a darkness that glows faintly, as though lit from within. It waits, still and patient, the resonance hums once more, lower than before, deeper, almost inaudible. The inscriptions ripple in response, and for a moment the entire hall seems to lean toward the doorway. The silence presses close, heavy with invitation. You step forward, drawn not by choice, but by inevitability. The pool behind you shivers, the stars above bend lower. The hall fades into shadow. You stand before the trembling door of light, and as you breathe, it breathes with you. Its surface ripples like water, its glow folds like fabric. Beyond it lies the unknown, yet it does not frighten. It calls. The silence grows deeper, softer, infinite, and as you place your hand upon its glow, as the threshold bends and opens, you realize the journey is not into a temple, nor into the sea, but into the silence itself, a silence that holds stars, memories, and the unspoken promise of what lies yet ahead. It begins with a silence that glimmers, a hush so tender it seems to rest on the skin like cool breath. The ocean does not roar, it listens. Its stillness spreads from one horizon to the other, a single sheet of indigo laid across the world. Just beneath that glassy surface, stars float like seeds, waiting to bloom. They never hurry, they tremble, tilt, drift, then brighten, then fade, as if each one remembers the sky it once belonged to and is deciding, with great patience, whether to rise again. The horizon bends, as though folded by unseen hands, a soft curve pressed inward, welcoming the eye to lean closer. From this bending comes emergence, shapes rising out of depth, not ships, not islands, but something older, something made of patience and light. Temples lift into view, vast and suspended in twilight, their stones softened by currents, their roofs tangled with drifting constellations that have fallen from above and made their home among the arches. You do not swim, the water bears you, the way silence bears a prayer, and you drift without weight or need, carried forward into a realm where time has loosened its knots. Everywhere is indigo, but it is not one color. It is 100 muted shades pressed together, ink washed thin. At the edges, velvet thick; at the center, seamist blue; at the periphery, where the unknown begins. As you draw near, the temples seem neither newly born nor ruined by age. They are held in a delicate suspension between remembering and invention, like a thought someone had once and keeps having again, softer each time, brighter each time, fading, and returning like breath. A single star unlatches itself from the sky and slides down the invisible slope of night. It touches the surface with such gentleness that the water seems to sigh. Ripples move outward in luminous rings that never quite dissolve, and the rings touch the half-submerged columns, lighting the pale growths that drape them like veils. Seagrass, luminous and fine as hair, combs the light into threads. The roofs breathe under slow tides of starlight. Constellations knit themselves across the eaves and then unravel, not in sadness, but in the calm understanding that all patterns must open to become new patterns. When your fingertips brush the water, it pulses with a quiet recognition. The surface is cool, but beneath it there is warmth, like a hand held too long near a candle. A hum rises from nowhere and everywhere, a tender note that could be a bell if a bell were too shy to ring. The sound passes through you rather than around you, and when it does, memory loosens from the body like a ribbon in wind. Shadows you did not know you carried lift and hover, patient and kind died, and the temples tilt their faces, if temples can have faces, to meet the part of you that is made of listening. You pass under the first arch. The stone is not rigid. It appears to ripple at the granules, as if a tide beneath the tide is passing through it. In the arch's inner curve, inscriptions shimmer like minnows, turning as one. No hand carved them. They are verses made by the meeting of current and moonlight, lines that lift, blur, bend, and reform the moment your gaze rests upon them. Reading here is not a matter of eyes and grammar. It is the hush you keep inside when a bell is rung in, the distance, and you want to hear the last of it. It is the feeling of a name on the tongue before you remember whose name it is. Beyond the arch, a hall opens with the silence of a book opening to a page that has waited your whole life. Columns stand at distances measured by heartbeat, their spacing so patient that breath falls into rhythm with them. The floor is a slow river of light. Every step sends a delicate tremor outward, and the tremor does not break the light. It refreshes it, and the light does not act as light should. It gathers itself like fabric and smooths out again. Statues accompany you down the hall, cloaked. Figures with faces left unmade, hands carved in gestures of offering that hold nothing and yet seem to hold the idea of holding. One carries a bowl the ocean keeps filling. One holds a lantern that gives off no flame but still casts an aura that remembers fire. One cradles a mirror, and in its surface the ceiling's constellations are not simply reflected but reimagined, shifted to include a faint shape that could be you. The roof is a drifting sky of its own, braided with tendrils of light that move like underwater vines. Constellations catch there and dangle, swaying whenever some delicate, unseen current passes. Sometimes a braid of luminescence loosens and descends, and as it falls, it breaks into small colonies of glow that hover in the hall like thoughtful snow. You move through them slowly, careful not to stir too much of anything, and they part in graceful uncertainty, as if deciding whether to welcome you or simply remember you. When they brush your skin, they feel like words someone nearly said. A soft passage opens to your right, and the sound that drew you through the first arch breathes again, a little nearer now, resonant as a bell held against the heart. The passages. Walls are covered in scripted water, not water running down stone, but water running itself upon the surfaces, not streaming away, but changing letter by letter into new forms that carry old meanings. You cannot translate them, but you do not need to. In this place, understanding is not the taking of a thing. It is the offering of your quiet into the quiet already present. When you give your quiet, the writing brightens, and for a heartbeat, it steadies to show a door. The door is woven of glow, its hinges mist, its handle a small crescent of starlight. When you lift your hand, the door releases itself from the wall and floats, not away from you, but toward your depth, inward, through the body, into the rooms where you keep your sleeping seasons. You step through, and the floor beneath becomes more water than stone, the air more tide than air. A courtyard reveals itself, a circle of columns, open to the noun always night, with a pool at the center, as still as a forgotten vow. The pool holds the sky, but it holds something else, to a second sky, one you know from your earliest sleeping, the sky that appeared over your bed when you were too newly made to speak of fear. In that younger sky, stars are not distant, they are resident. They dwell in the room. They hum to the familiar that would have frightened you had humming not been invented. The pool is both skies at once, and the doubling makes a third that cannot be named without scattering. You lean closer, and the surface deepens to show arches upon arches receding inside, each other like echoes of a bell tossed gently down a well. A breeze that is not wind moves through the courtyard, and the veils draped from the columns lift a little, showing the hidden lengths of stone beneath. The veils are woven from the thin luminescence of plankton and sleep. When they sway, they carry tiny constellations stitched into them, small, patient creatures of light who know everything that has been lost and hold it anyway, without sorrow, without triumph, with a fidelity that does not ask to be seen. You place your palm against one veil, and it cools your skin the way lake water cools the wrist in summer. When you draw your hand back, the faint outline of your palm remains for a moment, glowing like a quiet intention, then fades into the fabric. As if you had always been there, something like a bell tone touches the air and retreats. Then again, closer, but still shy. There is no metal here, no rope, no tower from which to cast sound. Yet the tone arrives as truthfully as rain. It is round, hollow, tender, as if wrung by a creature who has lived so long with silence that it forgot how to strike and remembered only how to breathe. The tone crosses the pool and steps into you. You feel it in your ribs, where the cage houses the soft bird that keeps you. The bird tips its head, listens back, and the bell answers with a second tone, lower. And the bird settles and closes the room around itself, the way a lantern closes around flame. On the far side of the courtyard, a stairway descends. It is not made of blocks, it is made of intervals. Each step is a pause that carries the next step inside it. You take one, then another, and the pool rises, then hovers at the level of your shoulder, then your ear, then you are below it, and it is roof. And you see its undersurface, a trembling mirror that holds both skies and their third combined sky. And for a moment, you think you could fall upward into it and never stop. The stairway opens into a corridor that curves the way a river curves when it has decided to go around a hill instead of through it. Here the inscriptions are faint, barely there, visible only when you look askance. If you try to see them, they hide. If you soften your gaze, the words return and float as if they had always been floating. The corridor leads to a chamber whose walls are draped with heavy curtains of fog. There is no wetness to them. They are fog in name and texture, not in consequence. You pass your hand through, and the fog takes the shape and lets go of it. Figures form there for a breath and dissolve. One looks like an old memory of laughter. One looks like a shadow crossing a river at night. One looks like the patience your grandmother wore when she stirred a pot slowly just to listen to the spoon's circular prayer. The chamber's center is occupied by nothing you can name. It is an absence shaped like a perfect oval, rimmed by a rim of light so narrow you might think it an eyelash of a star. You step toward this absence, and a door reveals itself without moving, as if the door were not hidden, but waiting for you to be the kind of seeing that sees it. The handle is cool, though you do not touch it. The hinges never sound, though the door opens. The room beyond is smaller than a breath and larger than all the distances you have walked. Its floor is a mirror that does not reflect, it receives. Its walls are rivers that do not run, they remember. Its ceiling is an orchard of bells that have never been struck, but keep the idea of sound like fruit when you enter. The orchard begins to ripen, not with noise, but with readiness. The bells do not ring. They listen in 100 metals, none of them forged by heat. The room collects your quiet and lifts it gently, like a lantern carried up a mountain by night. You understand nothing except that you are understood, and the understanding is precise without being sharp. In the mirror not mirror of the floor, a sky grows, and in the sky a shore, and on the shore a figure, and in the figure the movement of someone who has learned to walk by counting the spaces between footfalls. You do not know if the figure is you in the past or the one who will dream you in some beautiful later. The river walls let the image pass, and the bells keep their ripeness. True, you leave when the room has finished remembering you, not before, not after. The door closes without ending. You stand again among the hushing veils and the columns that breathe. In some upper height there must be roofs, and on those roofs the constellations have tangled themselves in garlands and nets. You can feel their sifted glow harvesting the darkness, not to hoard, but to make the darkness soft enough to hold sleep. You ascend a smaller stair, this one scarcely more than a suggestion pressed into the air. It brings you to an opening where the temple opens to the ocean's open, and you see, spread to every edge of seeing, the sea's surface flecked with stars that have chosen to live here for a while beneath the waterline, just long enough to show you how calm light can be when it no longer needs to prove what it is. From this height, if height is what we can call a place that is more hush than elevation, you witness the horizon fold again, as if some careful hand is laying away a garment it has worn for years and will wear again when cool weather comes. Out of that fold, more structures rise. They do not repeat what the first temples have already said. Their language is similar, but spoken with a different tenderness. One wears a crown of comet twigs. One's facade is braided with the script of long journeys. One rests its vast weight upon a single, slender column that would break if it did not believe in itself completely. All are softened by currents. All are tangled with all are listening. A windless drift moves through your hair, though no wind has ever been able to live in a place so devoted to stillness. You taste salt the way a memory tastes when it returns after many years, quietly, without insistence, content to touch and fade. Far below, the pool at the heart of the first courtyard brightens. Its light climbs the undersides of arches and gathers in the shallow carvings where seagrass has found its home. The glow rises in slow pulses that begin to teach your body a rhythm that is not yours and yet suits you better than the old one ever did. Across to the left, through a colonnade that seems to have made peace with erosion and remains nonetheless, a long passage invites without motion. It is lined with niches holding small objects impossible to catalog, fragments of moons, seashells that contain the hush of snow, bells with leaves growing from their throats, veils folded around empty spaces shaped like wishes. You take one, shell. Hold it to your ear, and you do not hear the sea, because you are inside the sea. You hear instead the breath of someone falling asleep in another city. You hear their name closing its eyes. At the passage's end, water stands vertically, like a wall of glass. It is not barrier, not portal, but witness. When you step close, you are not reflected. What looks back is the pathway of your arrivals and departures through all the rooms you have ever left. Doorways appear within the wall, not one or two, but a garden of them, each a different shade of midnight, each hanging a bell of light from its lintel. Some doors are narrow and tall, like questions you asked in winter. Some are wide and low, like summers when the days were too long to spend, and you let them gather in your pockets. The bells do not ring. They breathe, and the breath gathers in your throat as a vow. You do not need to speak aloud. You choose no door. You let the wall keep its garden of thresholds. It is enough to be in their company and to understand that openings do not require crossing to bless you. Behind you, the corridor has already remade itself into a gallery of soft echoes. The veils are taller now. The statues have altered their hands by degrees so small the eye cannot measure them. The lantern that once remembered fire now remembers a river crossing at night, and its aura is a path laid thinly on the water for those who step without waking their reflection. You return to the courtyard, not by retracing, but by agreeing with distance. The pool's surface is untroubled, except for the smallest tremor now and then, the way a word trembles just before it finds its voice. Overhead, the roof garden of constellations lets fall a few more seeds of light. They drift down in slow spirals, some settling on the pool and dissolving with gratitude, some landing in the folds of the veils, where they will be carried as ornaments of the unseen. You kneel and cup water in both hands, and though the sea is vast, the weight in your palms is small, intimate, companionable. You lift that small, star-flecked weight and tip it back to the pool, and it rejoins itself without regret. The bell tone returns, truer now, and with it a tone below it, and with that a tone above, until three make the circle that keeps travelers company. The tones move from air to water and back, passing through the bodies of columns, through your body, through the stone that refuses to be only stone. The sound is a door no one opens, but everyone walks through. In its presence, you remember how it felt to be carried as an infant down a dark hallway by someone who knew exactly how to be silent and exactly when to breathe. A path reveals itself across the pool, not as stepping stones or bridge, but as a change in color so subtle you suspect it might be only an idea the water is having. You test it with your foot. The surface firms, not to resist you, but to make itself your companion. You walk. Each placement of weight invites a small lantern of light to open beneath your arch and then close with no sadness as you move on. In the pool's depths, things you cannot name reorganize themselves with the grace of schools of fish when a shadow passes, and then return to their lives of patient glow. Halfway across, you pause, not to look back, that is already understood, but to listen for the part of you that keeps pace. Only when beauty is so complete it begins to become mercy. The tones gather close and rest. What remains is the long, soft sound the sea makes when it sleeps beneath a sky that cannot stop forgiving. You step again, and the far side of the pool receives you with the tenderness of days that meet you at the door with warm towels. A final arch stands here, less perfect than the first, pitted in places where small creatures have written their homes. It is the most beautiful of all. Perfection has retired. Attention has taken its place. Through this arch the ocean opens, and the stars keep to their chosen depths, and the horizon folds for the third time tonight, revealing another lift of structures rising. Perhaps there is no end to this rising. Perhaps the world is a constant, emergent, with everything in it paused at the perfect midpoint. Not yet, not anymore. This now that feels like forever. You step beneath the arch, and the air grows tender as linen hung indoors during rain. Far away, the smallest bell permits itself a whisper, and the whisper finds your name where you left it on the shore of the last chapter. It returns the syllables to you freshly washed, and you hold them and do not speak them, and the not speaking becomes a light you can carry without tiring. Ahead, a door is gathering itself from the drift of glow, not insisting upon itself, not hurrying. A modest aperture of silver mist with a slender seam darker than night through its middle. It will be ready when you are, and you will be ready when it is, and readiness is the only arrival that matters here. The silence glimmers again. The stillness grows. Stars continue to bloom under the water, like secrets that have chosen gentleness over revelation. A veil lifts somewhere, and behind it another veil waits, and behind that a room you already love, though you have never entered it. You breathe in, and the sea breathes with you, and the bells keep the fruit of sound unfallen, and the door of mist listens to the shape of your footfall and approves. You do not move yet. You do not need to. The journey lengthens the way a river lengthens when night adds its miles of reflection. Everything doubles to become truer, then softens to invite you deeper. When you close your eyes, the courtyard remains, the pool remains, the folded horizon and its rising temples remain. They are patient. They have practiced waiting for ages and will practice for ages more. The glimmering silence lays its hand upon your shoulder as lightly as a lullaby, and the constellations caught on the roofs above sway as if to quiet a child. Water turns a page, stone inhales. Somewhere a mirror opens inward to a room of bells. Somewhere a river teaches a door to drift. Somewhere sleep takes your name and returns it to you with a silver thread stitched through it, so you may find it in the dark. You open your eyes, and the seam of the mist door holds. A petal of starlight lands upon your wrist. It does not ask to be noticed, it asks only to be carried a little way. You lift it into the hush between breaths and let it stay there, warm and small, while your body leans toward the threshold. The ocean's surface below keeps its seeds in bloom. The sky above keeps its patience unbroken, and the horizon, gentle in its folding, makes room for the next room, and then the next, and then the one after that, where the whisper you almost heard will become the path you almost see, and your stepping will be the answer you did not need. To say, asterisk, the dream breathes open with a horizon that refuses division, where sea and sky surrender their borders and dissolve into a single glowing veil. It stretches endlessly, neither above nor below, but everywhere, soft and seamless, like a fabric woven from silence. Stars fall upon it gently, scattered across the water like pale petals released by an unseen hand. Each one touches the surface, dissolves into a ripple, and leaves behind a faint memory of its light. The ocean remembers them, holding their echoes in its skin, glowing faintly as if cradling the lost hours of the heavens. From beneath this shimmering surface, silhouettes rise, slow and certain, like thoughts long hidden that finally lift their eyes. Crowns appear first, the faint edges of structures, vast and solemn. Then spires emerge, stretching upward with patience, shimmering as though they have been sculpted from starlight itself. These temples do not rush their ascent. They rise with the composure of eternity, their shapes unfolding from shadow to radiance, from absence to presence, until the ocean wears them like jewelry, half seen, half dreamed. The water does not resist their rising. It bends to them, cradles them, carries their weight, as though it has been waiting for them always. You drift closer, though the sea does not push, and the air does not pull. Movement here is not choice, but belonging. The water bends for you as it bends for the temples. It folds itself around your body like a veil of glass, transparent yet present, carrying you forward into avenues submerged in light. Each corridor stretches between columns that shimmer with drifting corals, their surfaces kissed with silver and gold. Blossoms of glow float upward from the floor, petals without stems, rising with unhurried grace until they vanish into the vast roof of twilight. The silence here is not emptiness. It is song before sound. You can feel it vibrating faintly in the arches, pulsing through the spires, woven into the air you breathe. The silence carries weight, and in that weight lives the suggestion of memory, as though each stone remembers every star it has ever mirrored, every ripple that has ever passed across its skin. When you reach your hand toward the columns, they shift faintly, inscriptions blooming like watermarks. They are not fixed, they are not still. They change each time you blink, as if the temple is writing itself anew to match the rhythm of your presence through the arches. You see halls of water and light folding endlessly into one another, each chamber more hushed, more luminous than the last. Cloaked figures stand at the thresholds, faceless and unmoving, yet they do not bar your path. They seem to be waiting, not for themselves, but for you. Their silence is not cold. It is reverent, tender, as though they are guardians of stillness itself, keeping it unbroken until you arrive to breathe within it. The floor beneath your feet glows faintly, each step stirring a ripple of pale blue light that spreads outward like the echo of a bell. The light does not fade at once. It lingers, stretches, then dissolves only when the next step is taken. It feels as though you are walking not on stone, but on memory itself, and each step awakens another fragment of the past. Whispers brush the edges of your hearing, not words, but fragments of tones, the suggestion of voices speaking from deep beneath the tide. You cannot catch them, and yet you know they are speaking of you, or perhaps to you. In a language meant only for the heart, a vast hall opens before you. The ceiling is not ceiling at all, but sky, bent low enough for stars to graze the tops. Of the columns, their light trembles as if in water, though you are not sure whether the stars are above or below, whether you are gazing upward or inward. In the center of the hall, a pool rests, still and unbroken. Its surface holds the reflection of both sky and sea, woven seamlessly together. so that when you gaze into it, you see not what is above, but what waits beyond. The pool deepens as you look, showing staircases descending into endless corridors of light, doorways framed in silver mist, arches dissolving into veils of starlit fog. It is not reflection, it is invitation. You kneel at its edge. The silence gathers, denser now, weightier, until it feels as though the whole temple has leaned forward to hear your breath. A single star drifts down from the sky and falls into the pool. It does not vanish. It dissolves slowly, spreading its glow across the surface until the entire expanse shines like a second heaven. The corridors within the water brighten, clearer now, more certain. The pool is no longer still. It breathes, expanding and contracting with the rhythm of the tide, the rhythm of your heart. And as it breathes, the air around you changes. The arches sway faintly, the columns ripple, the cloaked figures lower their heads, as if in recognition of what comes next. You reach forward, and the surface yields to you like silk, not wet, not cold, but alive. The pool accepts you, not pulling, not pushing, but carrying. The silence deepens once more, and in that silence, you feel the first tremor of the next chapter, waiting. A corridor not yet walked, a door not yet opened, a whisper not yet spoken, but already listening for you in the dark. At first, there is only a hum, low and steady, a sound so deep it feels as though it rises not from any one place, but from the world itself. It hums like the ocean dreaming, like stone breathing, like the weight of silence learning to sing. It trembles at the edges of perception, rolling through the body as though it were your own heart finding another rhythm beneath it. The air quivers, the water shivers, time itself seems to hold its breath. Then, as if the veil of night has been drawn aside by unseen hands, the darkness loosens. The silence parts, and you see them. Temples drift beneath the water, suspended in a silver glow, neither anchored to the seabed nor carried away by tides. They float like vast lanterns, tethered to invisible strings that disappear into the infinite. Dark above. The glow they carry is not borrowed light, but their own, pulsing softly from within, as though each one holds a heart that remembers the earliest songs of the sea. Their windows shine faintly, alive with trembling brilliance, casting ripples that move in two directions at once. Outward, they scatter across the water, painting shifting corridors of silver. Inward, they fold back upon themselves, like mirrors reflecting not what is, but what has not yet come to pass. It is as though the temples are dreaming of futures, of lives unstepped, of moments waiting still in the folds of time. Their glow bends the water around them into pathways, soft and luminous, waiting for you to drift nearer. You step forward, and the tide accepts you without question. It does not resist. It does not weigh you down. It bends around you as though you were expected. Each step sends ripples spreading outward, not of water, but of memory, long, soft waves carrying fragments of forgotten light. They shimmer faintly, linger, and then dissolve, leaving the air more hushed than before. You realize you are not walking through the sea, but through a memory of the sea. And each motion awakens what has always been waiting here, just beneath silence. The temples drift nearer, though they do not move. It is you who are carried to them, drawn forward without effort, guided by something older than choice. Their spires tilt gently, as though bowing, their crowns catching the soft scatter of stars above. When you pass between them, their glow deepens, silver bending into shades of indigo and pale gold. The water is thick with quiet radiance, and you feel yourself not entering, but being entered, as though the temples receive you into themselves, welcoming you into the stillness they have guarded for centuries without end. The hum lingers. It rolls through the arches, gathers in the hollow spaces, settles into the walls. The sound feels alive, almost like a voice, before it learns the shape of words. The silence between the tones is heavy, reverent, infinite. Each note feels less like a sound and more like an opening, a doorway through which something vast and unseen peers gently into you. Columns rise in procession, their surfaces veiled with strands of seagrass that glisten like green fire in the silver glow. Between them drift particles of light, slow and delicate, as if the very air has chosen to bloom. They swirl around you softly, responding to your movement, curling into spirals when you pause, scattering when you exhale. When they brush your skin, they leave traces of warmth that vanish into the body, lingering only as the faint impression of touch. You pass beneath an arch, and the floor beneath your feet brightens. Each step awakens a pulse of light, a trembling wave that flows across the ground like the unfurling of a hidden prayer. It stretches into the distance, weaving patterns you cannot fully see, then fades only to be renewed with the next step. The air is alive with anticipation, though nothing rushes here. Time itself drifts slowly, like breath drawn into sleep and never released. Through the windows, the outside world bends strangely. You see not the horizon, not the sea, but shifting forms of possible skies. Sometimes stars, dense as woven cloth. Sometimes pale dawns that never rise. Sometimes mirrored oceans suspended in the air, rippling like liquid glass. The windows do not show what is outside. They show what could be, futures unchosen, pathways unsent, moments waiting patiently for their time to come. You gaze, and for an instant, you see yourself walking through corridors of silver mist you have not yet reached, touching doors you have not yet opened. Then the vision dissolves back into glow, leaving only the question of how much of the future is already written in the water. The statues appear slowly, as though the light must gather itself to shape them. Cloaked figures stand against the walls, faceless yet watchful. Their posture is not stern but tender, like guardians who have stood too long to remember vigilance and now only remember presence. Some hold objects, a vessel spilling soft radiance, a staff wrapped in strands of coral, a mirror filled with rippling shadow. Each feels symbolic, but none explains itself. They do not speak, they do not move. They simply remain, as though waiting for you to notice that their silence is a language of its own. The hum swells again. It vibrates in the columns, in the arches, in the floor beneath you. It fills your chest and steadies your breath. The sound is not music. It is the ocean's pulse, the heartbeat. For a moment, you wonder if the temples themselves are breathing, rising and falling in a rhythm so slow it can only be felt here. In the stillness between heartbeats, at the center of the chamber, a pool shimmers. Its surface is unbroken, smooth as glass, but alive with hidden light. When you look into it, you do not see your reflection. You see rivers of silver threading through dark corridors, staircases rising into veils of fog, doors trembling faintly with inner fire. The pool does not reflect, it reveals. It shows not what is, but what waits. And as you gaze, you feel the water leaning toward you, as though it knows you will step closer. You kneel, and the silence thickens. It presses against your skin, fills your lungs, makes your heart beat slower, softer, as though you are sinking deeper into sleep. A star drifts downward, falling through the ceiling of water, landing gently in the pool. Its glow spreads, rippling outward, bending the visions until they sharpen. You see pathways more clearly now, endless halls illuminated by lanterns, arches spiraling into the distance, figures cloaked in silver, waiting patiently by doorways. The pool breathes with you, each inhalation brightening its depths, each exhalation dimming them until your body and the vision fall into rhythm together. You lower your hand. The surface yields, cool and living, folding around your touch like silk. Ripples spread outward, carrying fragments of light into the chamber, climbing the columns, trembling in the arches. The statues lower their heads. The hum deepens, fuller, stronger, as though something vast has woken. The pool does not resist, it accepts, it opens. And as it opens, you feel yourself being drawn forward, not into water, not into depth, but into the space where silence becomes memory, where memory becomes light. The temples around you blur, the columns ripple like fabric, the spires bend into haze, the cloaked figures dissolve into silver mist. All that remains is the glow of the pool, widening, deepening, drawing you inward. The hum follows, resonant and endless, as if promising to guide you through what lies beyond. You breathe once more, and the threshold receives you. You drift forward, and the chamber falls away. Behind you, the lantern temples float on in their silver glow. Ahead, a passage of light trembles open, waiting. The silence carries you. The hum steadies you. The pool brightens around you. And as the dream folds itself into the next chamber, you realize nothing has ended. You are only passing deeper, walking further into the infinite corridors of sleep, where the ocean sings and the lanterns of memory drift forever in the dark. The drift begins quietly, as if the world has turned a page and paused to read the blank margin between words. The water is a long breath laid across the earth, unbroken, lucid, a field of night stretched thin enough to let starlight pass above. The constellations loosen their hold and begin a soft descent, not falling so much as remembering how to return. They enter the tide like lullabies, dissolving on a lip, one note at a time, glowing for a heartbeat, then widening into rings that move outward without hurry. Each ring carries a memory of light, and each memory settles into the skin of the ocean and rests. Beneath the surface, something answers. Faint structures, no more than suspicions of geometry, shimmer into being. Their first gesture is a quiet line, a patient curve, an outline that leans toward form but does not insist. Then the lines thicken, the curves meet, and columns begin to rise through the slow braid of currents. Their ascent has no urgency. It is the unspooling of a story that knows it cannot be rushed. Stone unfolds, as though lifted by the hands of sleep itself, and spires travel upward through the silver dark, not to pierce it, but to become another way the dark can shine. The water accepts you as if it has been practicing for this moment. It holds your weight without weight, tilts your body into the hush, and carries you toward the first arch of luminous stone. You do not swim, you are moved. A coolness gathers along your arms like evening on the surface of a mirror. The sea's temperature is a kind of kindness. Your breathing slows, and the night around you slows in answer, as if all of it were taking instruction from the smallest ease, arriving at the center of your chest. Under the arches, the world is made of soft physics and old vows. The ceilings sag with silver mist that never drops, a fog suspended by a promise the temple made to silence long ago. Every wall hums faintly, not as a machine hums, but as a shell hums with the neighborhood of waves. The pitch is low and patient, the sort of sound you only notice after you have noticed that every other sound has gone. It moves inside the stone and inside you until the distinction between what resonates and what is resonated with becomes unimportant. The floor is tiled, with mosaics that look as if the night taught its fragments how to hold hands. Lines of pale mineral trace constellations the waking world has never named, their roots bending into spirals and vanishing paths that return you to where you began but slightly changed. When the light shifts, figures flicker along the tessellated surface, slender shadows, cloaked and unhurried, the silhouettes of travelers who walked these corridors when your name was still a cloud of future breath. Their steps repeat and dissolve, a rhythm that persuades the heart to unclench. Some pause at a threshold and seem to glance back, though there is no face to shape the glance. Others pass through veils of mist and leave a brief, soft vacancy behind, like the warm outline a body leaves on a chair. A bell speaks once, far away. It is a round, warm sound, almost shy, as if it were rung inside a dream and reached you by traveling along the seams. The tone curls through the hall and disappears into the silver ceiling, then returns thinner, as if remembering itself. You wait for a second strike. It does not come. The single note continues to happen long after it can be heard, which is the way true tones behave, preferring resonance to repetition. You carry it forward like a small lantern inside the chest. The corridors divide, then join again the way a river learns its valley. One passage leans toward a hush darker than the others. You let the current of your desire swing you gently into it, the way a leaf lets the river decide the curve. Here the walls hold a different brightness, the kind that glows as if lit from within by stones thinking about the moons they used to love. Your fingertips drift along the carvings. Lines lift under the pads of your fingers, not words, but the intention that precedes words. A door appears briefly in the grain and goes on, being a wall. You breathe with the disappointment and feel it soften into patience. Not yet does not mean no. The water never pushes against you. It shapes itself to your edges, and when your edges forget themselves, it shapes itself to your forgetting. You float through an arch whose keystone is a piece of night with an air bubble. Trapped inside, the bubble holds a tiny model of the sky, every star where it is not, a gentle mistake that makes the real heavens seem merciful. The arch opens into a nave where the pillars are not placed to hold weight, but to teach stillness how to stand. From their capitals hang veils that have learned to be water without falling. They breathe with your breath. When you pass, they sway, just enough to confirm that you are not imagining their attention. Statues line the nave. Yet to call them statues suggests a captured gesture, and nothing here is captured. They are moments that have chosen to rest. Cloaks gather around their ankles as if wind were a memory they regret and revere. Hands hold objects that decline to resolve. A mirror that looks like a door, and a door that looks like a bell. A bowl filled with darkness, bright enough to read by. You feel a thought begin behind your eyes and decide to let it end without being born. The relief is immediate, like untying a knot in a rope you had mistaken for your spine. Your feet find a shallow descent disguised as level ground. Each step hums, and the hum travels into the mosaic and along a vein of soft light that branches and returns and branches again until it becomes a river system beneath the floor. You imagine the map of it etched in a steady hand, then stop imagining and let the river make its own case. The traveler's shadows respond. They sharpen, then pale, then sharpen again, as if rehearsing a crossing. One shadow turns its head slightly, the suggestion of a profile, noting your presence. A hand the color of smoke lifts with the delicacy of someone who has just remembered they are loved. In the side chapel, the mist deepens toward milk. The air feels textured, a velvet you breathe. Bells hang from the undersides of arches, asleep, but dreaming of being struck. Their lips hold the memory of bronze. A halo of salt crystals has formed around each clapper, a slow snowfall that the water has taught itself to perform. You pass beneath, and the sleep inside the bells shifts, not waking, only rolling to a more comfortable side beyond the chapel. A court opens to the ocean with a grace that ignores geometry. Here the ceiling is gone, and the sea's surface, far above, is another floor you will someday walk. Stars continue to fall into it like seeds, and the seeds continue to bloom in the depths, lighting gardens curled among the temple's foundation stones. In the court's center is a round pool, its boundary a low rim of luminous rock where tired thoughts can sit and soak their feet. The pool holds a double sky, the one you can point to and the one you remember when you close your eyes. The two do not argue. They are two hands of the same gesture. You kneel and let your shadow join the shadows that were here before you. For a moment you mistake your reflection for someone you are about to become. The water corrects you kindly. It erases your face and writes in its place a stair that descends into a stair that descends into a stair. In the pool's shallow margin, small fish carry letters on their scales. When they turn, the letters become other letters, and then stop being letters altogether, choosing instead to be the small, bright muscles of living. A faint current tugs at your wrist, as if a pulse outside your body has remembered you. You stand and let the current lead. It carries you into a nave deeper than the first, not larger, deeper, a measurement of attention, not size. The walls shift from white to gray, to a blue that knows the word before. On the floor, the mosaic maps open to show routes threading beyond the temple. Tiny figures embedded in the tesserae move along them with untheatrical purpose. One carries a lantern with no flame but a radius of notice. One counts steps with the thumb, not to make sure they add up, but to give time a small game to play. A sound begins as a tremble and matures into a tone, not the shy bell, from before. A lower voice, a bowl of sound, set gently on a table and struck with a wet finger. It finds the hollows of the hall and rests in them. It finds your hollows and rests in those. Parts of you you have not visited in years lift their heads like animals waking at the smell of rain. The tone does nothing more than continue, which is the most difficult thing. In its company, it becomes easy to forgive clocks for their incessant optimism. You notice lanterns that were not there when you entered, or they were there, but you had not yet arrived where they could be seen. They hang at uneven intervals, each the size of a cupped hand, each holding a drift of light like breath caught in glass. When the tone tilts slightly, the lanterns answer, by dimming and swelling in a rhythm that is not quite yours, but wants to be. You align yourself by degrees, the way a body aligns itself with sleep without exactly deciding to fall. A narrow door appears in a wall that is not a wall so much as a long recollection of stone. The door is nothing more than a seam of shadow stitched with silver. On a winter window, you feel foolish for wanting to knock. Foolishness loosens something important, and the door allows itself to move. The room beyond is small and round, the shape of a held note. No furniture. The floor is a mirror that accepts, but does not return. The ceiling is a dome of fog, slowly turning in itself. An unworried sky stand in the center. Listen. The hum settles into a nearly inaudible thread. A whisper comes to stand beside it. Not a voice, the idea of a voice. You do not hear words, only their silhouettes. Something like continue. It takes your outline and fills it with a little water, a little night, a few sparks of mineral patience. When you leave, the room will hold that outline for a while and then release it into the corridor like a friendly rumor back in the nave. The traveler's shadows have multiplied. Some walk along the walls as if the walls were streets. Some appear to confer, hands making the small arcs of plans. One moves with the hesitation of someone learning how to step again after years of floating. You wish them an easy lesson. A section of mosaic brightens, and you follow the bright, but it leads you to a threshold that looks unimportant, a side exit where a caretaker might keep a broom, but the humility of it is disguise, and the disguise is a courtesy. Through the threshold is a cloister of arches, low enough to invite intimacy. Between each pair of columns, a veil hangs. Some are woven of fine dark threads, some of glimmering strands pulled from seagrass at dawn, some of fog so thin it seems to remember being smoke. Images appear within them when you pass. The curve of a hill you once named for yourself, the window where a friend waited, the table that held a bowl of pears on the day you learned a sorrow and ate one anyway. You do not push the veils aside, forgiving your weight with grace. At the cloister's far end, a stair rises, not up or down but forward, a direction your bones accept, even as your mind tries to rename it. The steps are shallow, generous. A child could climb them in sleep. You do. At the top, a balcony opens to a view of the submerged avenues, the lantern-lit naves, the veiled courts. All of it shines with the calm of something that has not needed to be better for a very long time. Far off, the sea's higher surface rolls once, a heavy blanket being adjusted by a careful hand, and the stars that chose to rest their flare. And dim, pleased to be included, you lean on the balustrade, and the stone beneath your forearms turns warmer. You realize it is not stone, but memory made durable. It remembers every traveler who waited here to see whether the world would answer their waiting. It remembers each yes and each kind no. You add your weight to that long ledger. The hum offers a lower branch, and you take it. Breathing is easier from here. The throat opens. The ribs widen a little. The silence stops pretending to be emptiness. Below. The mosaics begin a slow rearrangement, so subtle you wouldn't notice if not for the habit of noticing you've learned since you arrived. Pathways open where there were none, others close, without loss. At a nod from the unseen, a new corridor lines itself with lanterns and pulls a thread of mist through, as if lacing its own boot. The traveler's shadows converge at the mouth of this corridor, then wait, polite as trees at a path's edge. You understand that the path is for you first, not because you are important, but because your feet are here. You descend. The corridor accepts your step as a paddle accepts a river. Light follows without crowding. The lanterns sigh in a language that has never required consonants. They reflect decisions you did not make and, astonishingly, do not punish you for having left unmade. One mirror briefly shows a bridge in snow. Another shows a door you closed with unnecessary gravity. Another shows a small, laughing mouth you once kissed goodbye for the last time without knowing. You thank the braid for its accuracy and keep walking. The corridor opens into a rotunda, where the ceiling is a clock with no hands and every numeral replaced by a tiny bell. None ring. Their not ringing is music. Around the curve of the wall, niches cradle simple offerings. A clay cup, a river stone rubbed smooth by worry, a scrap of cloth that smells like smoke and rosemary. You add nothing. The absence of your offering arranges itself among the others as if it had been expected. Sometimes what you do not place is exactly what a room needs to complete itself. In the center, a column rises and stops short of the ceiling, as if leaving room for the thought of dissolving. Upon the column's flat crown rests a veil folded many times, pale as morning breath. You touch it and it grows lighter, as if you had removed from it a weight you could not see. Unfold once. A faint map appears, not of places, but of feelings, arranged as if they were cities. Unfold again. Unfold a third time, and the veil is only veil, too airy to keep secrets. You wrap it lightly around your wrist, and it agrees to be borrowed until the place where it belongs announces itself. When you step from the rotunda, the temple seems to lean nearer, the way elders lean nearer when a child says something interesting. In a quiet voice, you do not feel watched. You feel accompanied. The hum has learned your breath and rearranged itself to make room. A bell speaks again, closer this time, and another answers in a brother key. Their tones float along the edge of hearing, like two boats on adjacent canals. It is not an exit, it is a gentling. You pass through as through a curtain of cool air. On the other side waits a room the size of a small promise, hardly larger than the span of your reaching arms. Its floor is shallow, water warm as a kept hand, and becomes the face that made it. The ceiling is veined with dark lines that twitch faintly like nerves at rest. You stand in the warm water, and everything you have carried lowers its voice. The veil around your wrist brightens like the quietest idea. The bells overhead keep their fruit unfallen. Through the walls, a procession passes, shadows you know only by their patience, moving without feet, lanterns suspended where hearts might be. They are not on their way to something. They are being their way. You do not ask to join them. You are already among them, exactly as you are, standing ankle deep in a room that listens. When the moment ripens, a seam appears where no seam was. A door gathers itself from the light, and half of the mist, made of the same substance as endings that are also entrances. It opens not outward or inward, but into the accurate center between. Beyond, a softness waits that is not emptiness, a depth that is not distance. The water at your ankles lifts and sets your feet like a careful parent guiding a drowsy child down 2 steps to the garden. You sense the next chamber and its unlearned music, the bell that will speak there, the mirror that will not reflect, but invite the travelers who will pause and make room for your passing, as if you are the thought they have been about to think. You look back once, not to measure, only to bless. The halls veiled in silver mist, the humming walls, the mosaics still holding the shadows of those who moved before you. All of it remains exactly as it is and always will be, patient, lucid, untaken by haste. A solitary star chooses this moment to fall through the far water, landing as lightly as a letter in a trusted hand. Its light touches the rim of the pool in the first court and becomes a path no wider than a vow. You turn to the waiting seam. The door breathes, and you breathe, and the breaths decide on a rhythm they will share. The temple floats like a lantern behind your closed eyes. The ocean carries your name like a quiet bell inside its mouth. You step, and the room steps with you. The veil at your wrist loosens and follows, a pale stream of thought that will remember how your pulse felt at the threshold. The dream carries you forward, and the water does not resist. Everything that matters keeps shining in the places you have just left, and everything you have not yet seen begins to glow with the gentleness of a future that has chosen to be kind. A vast silence spreads outward, so complete that it seems to draw the breath from the world. The sea and the sky surrender their boundaries, folding into one endless tapestry where darkness is threaded with light. You cannot tell where the ocean ends or the heavens begin. They have become one body, one surface, one dreaming veil stretched without seam. Stars hover just above the water, close enough that their trembling glow brushes the tide. Their reflections lengthen downward into the deep, as though they are reaching not to be seen, but to beckon, inviting you to follow them into the endless quiet beneath. The water stirs without wave or current. It opens in slow parting, not as if pushed aside, but as if it has chosen to reveal what it has held secret for an age. From within the depths, immense temples rise into view, not climbing but floating, suspended as though the silence itself carries their weight. They are unmoored, drifting gently with the tide's slow pulse, yet their presence feels eternal, rooted beyond stone, beyond time. Their surfaces gleam with luminous corals, each one glowing like a captive star, each one forming constellations across the walls and arches. It is as though the heavens themselves have descended to inscribe their patterns upon the temple's skin. You drift nearer, carried without motion, the water folding around you like a patient hand. The indigo, their bases, vanishing into silver depths. They are both ruin and birth, both memory and invention. belonging neither to sea nor sky, but to the sacred space where both dissolve. Their walls shimmer with pale fire, a light that does not burn but lingers, tender as a dream half remembered. The corals breathe faintly, their glow waxing and waning. The air thickens, the silence hums with weight. You feel the temples are listening, their drifting spires leaning toward you in quiet recognition. Their windows glimmer like eyes half closed, casting ripples of silver across the water. The ripples stretch outward and inward at once, distorting the night, reshaping the reflections of stars. You see visions folded within them, doorways trembling with veils of light, staircases descending into fog, corridors lined with figures who wait without moving. How it will unfold. You touch the water, and it answers. A ripple spreads outward, glowing faintly, carrying your presence into the vast hall of silence. Their corals flare brighter, their walls shimmer more vividly, and the stars above lean closer, drawn into the dialogue of your breath and the sea's memory. Of this floating eternity, arches appear ahead, luminous and tall, their curves soft as fog, their surfaces veined with light. You move through them without stepping, carried effortlessly by the tide of stillness. Inside, the chambers are veiled with silver mist, drifting across the stone-like breath, across a mirror. Pulse of something beyond hearing. Statues stand in procession, cloaked and faceless, their hands raised in gestures that echo prayer. Each holds something different, a lantern that breathes without flame, a mirror filled with dark water, a bowl spilling endless radiance that never falls. They do not move, yet their silence is alive, as if they are waiting for you to remember what they already know. The floor beneath you brightens with each step, rivers of light blooming beneath your feet, stretching outward in patterns that resemble constellations but change too quickly to be charted. The paths rearrange themselves, dissolving and reforming, as though the ground itself is choosing how you will walk. The light lingers on your skin, filling you with the strange sensation of being read, as though the temple itself studies you. Not to judge, but to recognize. Above, the ceiling trembles. It opens to reveal the night sky mirrored perfectly within the water's depth, so that the stars are both above and below, infinite in their reflection. The air thickens, heavy with reverence, and for a moment you feel suspended in the very center of the cosmos, cradled in the pause between inhalation and exhalation. A sound begins. At first, it is only a vibration, barely distinct from silence, but slowly it gathers, deep and resonant. It is the voice of the ocean singing in its sleep, low and steady, filling the arches, pressing gently against your chest. It is not a song, but a remembering, as though the sea has chosen to recall all that it has carried, every star, every silence, every forgotten prayer. The statues hum in answer, their gestures trembling faintly, and the corals flare, casting ripples of fire. Across the walls, the entire temple breathes with the tone, and you with it, until your body no longer knows where you end and the silence begins. In the center of the hall, a pool glows. Its surface is perfectly still, though its light shifts constantly, like moonlight woven with shadow. When you gaze into it, you see not yourself, but corridors that stretch into infinity. Stairways spiral downward into darkness lit by unseen fires. Doorways of veils open into chambers filled with stars. Figures move, slowly along the edges, faceless and gentle, pausing as though waiting for you. The pool is not reflection, it is revelation. You kneel, and the silence gathers closer, heavy with expectation. A single star drifts downward from the sky and lands softly in the pool. Its glow spreads outward, igniting the corridors, sharpening the stairways, illuminating the veils. The water deepens, not in depth, but in meaning, pulling your gaze further into its endlessness. The statues bow their heads, the hum deepens, the air itself waits. You reach forward. The pool accepts you instantly, cool and living, folding around your touch, as though it has been waiting all this time. Ripples of light spread outward, climbing the walls, trembling in the arches, brushing the faceless figures with silver. The chamber bends, the temples blur, the stars ripple. All that remains is the glow of the pool, widening, deepening, drawing you inward. The silence is vast now, not empty, but full, not absence, but presence, opening like a door of light, and you feel yourself drifting into its heart behind you. The temples remain, vast and eternal, drifting gently with the tide, their corals shimmering with patient fire. Ahead, a new passage glows faintly, trembling, at the edge of vision, waiting to be entered. The ocean and the sky are one, the stars are infinite, the silence unbroken, and as you are carried deeper into that glowing threshold, you understand that nothing has ended. A place where even silence must bow to the mystery of what waits next. It begins with a hush across the sea, a stillness so complete it seems the stars have leaned down to listen. The dark is wide and breathing, and the horizon folds inward as if an unseen hand has creased the night to mark a page you will return to. Above, constellations loosen and gather, their faint silver trembling like candlelight behind a veil. Below, the ocean holds its breath. In that deep pause, forms arrive. First, the mere idea of structure, then edges, then height. From the quiet, the outlines of temples surface without breaking the skin of the water, floating just beneath. As though the world is wearing them, they glow with the faint light of forgotten constellations. You can read the slow pulse on their walls, stars that lost their names and found them again in coral and stone. Each temple moves with the rhythm of an unseen breath, a rise and fall so patient it teaches your chest to follow. The sea does not separate from the sky here. The two are married in one continuous fabric that folds and unfolds, and the temples drift between, solemn as moonlit prayers. You do not wade, and you do not swim. The water simply adjusts to your intention and carries you as though it has been, listening all along for the shape of your step. Your body lightens, your thoughts loosen their knots and lengthen like shadows in evening. The skin of the ocean cools your palms, not with chill, but with a truth that does not require heat. You are held. The first spire passes close, and its surface is a mosaic of dim galaxies, tiny spirals sunk like fossils into the stone, luminous. Corals breathe along the edges, opening and closing as if each were a small lung for the temple. Through a window of pale glow, you glimpse a chamber where mist hangs in drifts, silver as breath on glass. No one moves, everything moves. The stillness is full of living. The water makes room. Columns rise beneath the surface and guide you inward into avenues of light. The arches curve like the underside of wings. Bells sleep in the high dark, veiled, dreaming of the sound they will become. When you pass under, they stir without ringing, and the hush grows deeper. A velvet that wraps the bones and smooths their memory of weight. You cross a threshold that is no more than a difference in temperature, and the hall that takes you is lined with panels of writing. Not letters, not language in the way daylight uses it, but currents pressed briefly against stone and frozen there by moonlight. When you draw near, the panels change. The water in the grooves lifts and turns, and lines thread themselves into new arrangements. Never words, always meaning. It says, stay. It says, continue. It says, you have come as far as you need to for this breath, and there is farther yet. When this breath has finished, the floor is a field of slow stars. Each step awakens a soft radiance that flows away in streams, branching into rivers of glow that wander out beneath walls and vanish into distances the eye cannot keep. For a moment, the streams sketch a map of what might be next, a curve to the left, a stair that prefers patience, a door that will not be a door until you are ready to remember what doors are for. The light fades, and with it any need to hurry. Shadows gather in the corners and take shapes without faces. Travelers, you recognize them the way a dream recognizes its own silence. They move in measured arcs along the mosaics, always 3 or 4 steps ahead or behind the length of your thought. One raises a hand as if to greet the water itself. Another carries a mirror, not for reflecting, but for keeping. Within it, nothing appears except the calm of attention. Their presence lifts the echo from your footfalls until your passing makes a sound like silk folding. A corridor opens that you had not noticed, though you understand it must have been there all along. Its entrance lowers itself to your height, a courtesy. Inside, the air tastes of iron and salt. The color of the world tilts toward blue. Along one wall runs a chain of small bells, with mouths closed by thin films of crystal. Salt has drawn lace across them. You touch nothing, and yet your nearness is enough to loosen a single flake. It drifts, catches a current of air that should not exist underwater, and dissolves like a thought you no longer need to carry. In the moment of its dissolving, the entire corridor hums with a tone too low to name. Your ribs incline toward it. Your pulse, obedient, rests at the corridor's end. A circular room waits with a floor of shallow water and a ceiling of clouded glass. Beneath the glass, star points blink like eyes that never accuse, only attend. The room is a bowl, and sound collects here very softly, the way dust collects on untouched books. On the water's skin, letters made of light appear, drift, and fade. Not messages, more like footprints of a wind that has learned to walk. You kneel, and the light ripples, your reflection into something kinder than memory. The older shape of your face lets go of its own edges and becomes a shore the tide can love without effort when you rise. The walls breathe out a veil that falls across the doorway you used to enter. The room has decided you have stayed exactly long enough. It opens another way, a seam in the curve, nothing more. But when you draw near, it knows you, and that recognition is enough to become a door. You descend by a stair that belongs to no geometry you have studied. Down means inward. The steps barely exist until your foot asks them to. The stair delivers you to a gallery of windows, each one a rectangle of water held still in stone. Behind, The glass scenes spiral into presence and then back out. A river flowing through a city whose name you almost remember. A night in which snowfall appears to rise from the earth and return to the clouds. A hill where someone waits with a lamp cupped in both hands, every gust seen by the gentle tilt of flame. It is not your life, it is your tenderness looking for places to live. The unseen breath that moves the floating temples moves here as well. The windows inhale, and the scenes grow nearer. They exhale, and distance resumes its polite posture. You place your palm against the cool surface of one window and feel the faint shock of connection. On the other side, a bell far, very farce, as if to agree that we have touched. Behind you, the travelers draw near without crowding. Their many footfalls gather into a pattern the water remembers. One of them stands beside you, the air colder by the width of a hand. You do not look to find a face. You simply accept their nearness as part of the scene, the same way you accept the low hum that is not your voice and the faint scent of copper you cannot explain. When you step away, the figure remains for a moment longer, then folds back into the shape of the corridor. You move on. Veils hang between arches, the fabric woven from nothing but light laid over light until it learns to behave as cloth. Each sways a fraction when you pass. On their surfaces, constellations have been thinned to threads and stitched into quiet. A little wind attends you, though wind should not be possible here. The veils make room. The arches lengthen. The hush grows large enough to be a home. A wide hall opens like the inside of a bell. The floor is stone, then water, then stone again, an alternating rhythm that reminds you of sleeping breath. In the center stands a column whose capital holds a shallow bowl filled with darkness that shines. You cannot say whether the shine comes from within the dark or from the patience with which the bowl presents its emptiness. Overhead, the ceiling trembles, and a panel of it becomes transparent, revealing the other ceiling, the one called sky. Stars drift like embers in a hearth that will never cool. One drops with exquisite slowness, reaches the window of water between worlds, and becomes a pearl of heat you feel on your wrist for 2 heartbeats before it fades to the temperature of forgiveness. A sound begins low in the walls and gathers itself into a tone that nestles in your ears like a sleeping bird. It is neither loud nor soft. It is exact. The bird wakes, lifts its small head, listens, and tucks itself deeper into your chest. The tone carries a question whose grammar is silence. You do not answer. The question is pleased.